Welcome one and all to the Hammer Territory Podcast. My name is Shawn Coleman. It's a pleasure to be with you as always, wherever you are and wherever you are listening. Hope that you are having a great week, and it is the latest edition of the Coleman and Coleman Law Firm, the favorite combination among Braves country. I don't know if that's actually true, but hey, for the sake of the show, we're going to act as it is. And always, Scott, I can't remember the last time we did back-to-back podcasts together, but good talking with you, sir. Hope that you're having a great week as well.
Hey, Shawn, good to see you, buddy. And hey, our co-hosts, man, like Steven is out in the middle of the ocean somewhere on a cruise ship, presumably not following the Braves. Good on him. Good timing there by Steven. Brad is always traveling. Brad never has 2 days at home without being on the go again. So yeah, the Coleman and Coleman show, kind of weird last 48 hours for the Braves. They had a big win on Monday, and then they got their butts whooped on Tuesday. And we're also like a week away from the trade deadline. So there's plenty of things happening, even if maybe it's not the standing situation that we were hoping for.
Absolutely. And of course, we can't thank you enough for joining us once again. Those of you who are consistently listening to the show, Hammer Territory, part of the Foul Territory family of podcasts. But let's get into that. We'll get into, there were some, rumblings, I guess you could say, some, basically rehashing of kind of known information, but this time from pretty knowledgeable sources. We'll get into that in just a moment when it comes to trade talks. But I do think that it's important to hit on the game real quickly. Of course, as we're recording, we are recording during the game. The Braves are losing 9-0. But this is kind of being what you should expect in the second half of the season, Scott. A little bit later on the show, we're going to talk about some things to look forward to, but it's more the inconsistency. It's good to see the offense doing better, but the pitching now, the lack of pitching depth, the injuries are really starting to catch up. So you're going to see some high-scoring games, but unfortunately, it's still going to lead to a lot of Braves losses. 8-3 last night, 9-0 tonight. That's probably going to be the theme for the second half of the season.
Yeah, it is a good thing that the offense has woken up a bit. Now, we say that as if they're not in the process of being shut out, or at least the last time I looked at the scoreboard, they were being shut out. But for the most part, over the last 2 weeks or so, really since Jerks and Profar came back, the offense has been better. I believe the Braves lead the National League in home runs in the month of July, and they were top 10 on the whole coming into today. So better. They're still not great. We're not going to, lie to ourselves and say that all is fixed with this team offensively, but they have been better than they were earlier in the year. But as we all kind of feared, when they lost Sale, when they lost Schwallenbach, they lost Smith-Shawver, they lose Lopez. I mean, they're running Davis Daniel, Joey Wentz, Bryce Elder as 60% of their rotation right now. And even Grant Holmes has maybe started to slow down a little bit as he really hits a high level of innings pitched for his standard. So it would be very on brand for this offense to figure things out in the second half, just as half of the pitching staff is on the injured list. But I think you have to take the mini victories where you can. And if it means the Braves are going to score a few more runs and maybe play more of these higher scoring games, even if they're probably not going to win a ton, you take it and hopefully it's something to build on.
Absolutely, because we all want to see the offense going again. Number one, it just makes the game more fun. Number two, gives you more room for error to work with. And number three, that's just kind of how we win games. That when this team is at its best, it's got its offense as its identity. But just because, there's not much to talk about in terms of potential winning this season, that doesn't mean that there's not stuff to talk about. And some pretty prominent names we're talking about the Braves today. Ken Rosenthal of The Athletic, as well as Buster Olney of ESPN. The gist of what they said is kind of what we've heard. Due to the fact that the Braves really have kind of put out there that they're not going to really discuss anybody in trade outside of rentals. I know that we talked in depth about a lot of different options on the trade deadline show. Make sure you check it out. But the Braves have kind of been adamant that they're really not going to talk about anybody other than rentals. And that led Ken Rosenthal, Scott, to basically say it's probably going to be a quiet deadline for the Braves. You're going to maybe see them sell off 2 or 3 pieces. As we discussed, the return on those pieces probably is not going to be anything world-changing. But Buster Olney also went a bit further to say, throw some cold water on some speculation. Sean Murphy is not available, basically. Sean Murphy is not one that is being discussed. It looks as if the Braves are they're kind of putting the same message with him that they did with Chris Sale. He's not going anywhere. What are your thoughts when you hear that? I get it, and we can discuss it a little bit more, but I also just don't want to completely shut the door if somebody really comes after Sean Murphy.
Yeah, over the last, 3 or 4 weeks, it's been basically the same message from every reporter around the Braves, locally and nationally, with the trade deadline. And yes, there are some kind of side pieces that they could sell and recoup some money and maybe a lottery ticket prospect or two. But I mean, if you read between the lines, nobody thinks that Sean Murphy is getting moved. And that's pretty significant because you can make a real case that Murphy might be a top 3 bat that was even presumably available at the trade deadline here, as 75% of the league finds itself in playoff contention. So if folks missed it, Only said pretty definitively the Braves do not intend to sell Sean Murphy. Now, maybe they revisit that discussion in the offseason. They might have to in order to address some of their other needs. But as Only pointed out, I think as all of our listeners know, the Braves for years have really valued having 2 good, reliable catchers. Catchers are so hard to find. We saw firsthand, they let go of William Contreras and Shea Langoliers, and the good young catchers just don't grow on trees. And lo and behold, the Braves have stumbled into another really good one with Baldwin. So yeah, I'm anticipating the next 10 days as we approach the deadline are going to be relatively quiet. There might be a little bit of a surprise out there, but frankly, the good players are not available and the rental players are just not going to command a ton in return.
So I'm kind of split on this. And the reason that I say that is because I get every reason as to why the Braves want to keep Sean Murphy through this trade deadline. They obviously want to see if this catcher DH combination thing can work. And if it can, it's an ideal situation. So many teams, I'm sure, would love to try it. That makes sense. It makes sense also to keep Sean Murphy around just to make sure, and we're going to talk about Drake Baldwin in a little bit, just to make sure Drake Baldwin is the real deal. Drake Baldwin, maybe he falls off or something like that in the second half of the season. You don't know. So keeping Sean Murphy around makes perfect sense. And lastly, it also makes sense to wait till the offseason because, as Steven and yourself have mentioned, it's really hard to implement a successful catching setup in the middle of the season. But also for the Braves, you get more trade partners in the offseason, and that can only drive Sean Murphy's value up. So there are reasons to keep him. But Scott, you also mentioned this, and I think it is such a huge point, is that if you're going to keep Sean Murphy, that is perfectly fine. But you've also got to figure out, if you're going to keep Sean Murphy, lose Marcell Ozuna, and you're going to be okay with the DH being Drake Baldwin and Murphy's level of offense, you've got to upgrade elsewhere. That's got to be a key. And Sean Murphy may be your best option to do that.
Yeah, it's fascinating because as we go to the offseason, if you take a quick stock of this lineup, let's just talk lineup only. We'll set pitching aside, but catcher is set. Regardless of what they do, the Braves are going to be in good shape at catcher. First base, locked in. Third base, locked in. The outfield, I think, is locked in. Now, if you want to argue that they're not married to Profar, sure. If you want to say they might be able to sell low, like really low on Michael Harris, I personally wouldn't bother, but it is what it is. Acuna, obviously you're not trading Acuna. But that leaves effectively 3 positions, 3 of your 9 spots in the lineup that you could presumably upgrade or need to upgrade this offseason. Second base, shortstop, and DH. And if you're going to run with Murphy and Baldwin as your catcher DH, I think that's fine. I think those 2 would hit enough because part of why Sean Murphy's really valuable is because he catches and he's an elite defensive catcher. Just offensively, pure offense, Murphy is a good hitter, but he's not a Kyle Schwarber or a Marcell Ozuna last year level type of hitter. But I think it would be fine. A Baldwin-Murphy rotation, it covers you in case of an injury. There's reasons the Braves want to carry these 2 catchers, and I think it would be fine as a catcher DH. The challenge is that then you have to upgrade your middle infield. And that's a lot easier said than done. I'm on the camp, short of Ozzie Albies just going nuts these final 2 months. I think you have to move on from Ozzie. He just hasn't shown us anything in a year plus to show that he is good enough. I know he has the cheap option on his contract, but he might be a total zero next season. And this lineup can't afford that. And then shortstop has basically been a black hole offensively since Dansby Swanson left. And we know how hard it can be to find a shortstop. So this is a real decision the Braves are going to have to make. Can they upgrade the middle of the infield without giving out a ludicrous contract and free agent? Or could they do it without trading Sean Murphy, who is by far and away their biggest trade chip right now? I don't know, Sean. I would love to have 5 minutes with Alex Anthopoulos and really just have a true heart to heart of where he feels like this organization is at. Because, I mean, that was a long-winded way of saying they have some really big decisions ahead of them in the next few months.
And the thing that scares me a bit when you were talking about the Sean Murphy, Drake Baldwin combination at catcher and DH, I imagine that there are many teams, Scott, out there that would love to implement that strategy. But you said that they may be able to hit enough. And I think that's accurate. I think that makes sense. But this Braves team needs as many potential elite sources of offense as it can get, especially if Austin Riley, Michael Harris, and Ozzie Albies are not what they once were. You hope that's not the case, but this year certainly is not offering any indication that that's not the case. The point that I'm getting at is that if you go with Sean Murphy and Drake Baldwin as your DH catcher, they may hit well for catchers, but it's not the same level as a DH. And then if you don't upgrade the middle infield, you're really back to square one once again. And that's got to change. You cannot afford to keep the potential of this offense at the same level as it has been the past 2 years.
Yeah, you just full stop. You can't run it back. Can't do it. I mean, that feels foolish to me. I don't think the Braves are going to do it. If they want to run it back with Michael Harris and hope that maybe with a full offseason, they can do some deep dive on what's wrong with his swing and his approach, maybe they can figure out Michael Harris. And if they have a good enough hitting DH, and let's say they go get a better second baseman, I think you can survive with a no-hitting Gold Glove level shortstop with Nick Allen. But that's, again, assuming you can find a good hitting second baseman, and those are not just readily available by any means.
Absolutely. I think Nick Allen himself is an asset for this team, but he is a winning asset, or he is a main asset for a winning team that has the luxury of having a very good glove. This team basically cannot just put their hopes on internal improvement while also letting Marcell Ozuna walk this offseason as the solution for this offense. They're probably going to have to go outside the box. They're probably going to have to get creative. And Sean Murphy is a pretty obvious choice if they decide to do that. But the biggest reason why we're talking about Sean Murphy with the year that he's having being potentially expendable is because how absolutely incredible Drake Baldwin has been. And the good thing about it, there are indicators that this just could be the beginning. It's not a flash in the pan. He could well be on his way to being one of the best in the game at the catcher's position. More on that in just a moment.
Time for a quickie break. Todd Father and I are going to tell you about Huel, but it's mostly going to be Todd Father because I'm going to take a sip.
Well, we're talking about Huel, 27 vitamins and minerals. It's a complete meal. Let's listen. We all have busy schedules. As Scott's sipping it down, it looks delicious. It tastes delicious. When we're on the run, we need something to eat quick. And guess what? Huel is there, all different flavors. Scotty loves them. I love them. And I love how variety-packed it is, and we can eat them any time of the day.
That's right. Yeah, check out the website. There's bars. There are so many different flavors. I love the black edition. Chocolate, 35 grams of protein. There's strawberry shortcake, coffee caramel, cookies and cream. I can go on. And you get yourself 15% off if you're a new customer using the code FOUL at Huel.com/foul. Please see our description for the terms and conditions. Skip the stress, not the nutrition. Try Huel today for complete nutrition with the code FOUL at Huel.com/foul.
So, Scott, as we have now shifted to the second half of the season, and we're now going to talk a little bit about what is there to look forward to. What positives should we focus on? Because I know that there's not a lot with the big league club, but that doesn't mean that you still can't find reason to tune in, keep up, and really enjoy the product that's your season. And first and foremost, you've got Ronald Acuna Jr., who's Ronald Acuna Jr., but perhaps the second biggest reason why is one Drake Baldwin. Now, we've talked Drake Baldwin plenty on this podcast, but I really wanted to dive into, after his incredible game, one of the best games we've seen from a Braves rookie ever on Monday night, wanted to talk about just how impressive Baldwin has been and also some indicators that it could stay, like it could be maintained beyond this year. Scott, I'll start, though, with you. Drake Baldwin. We figured that he had a good chance of being pretty good this year. I don't think anybody thought he'd be at this level.
Yeah. Baldwin's incredible. And it's not just that he's a catcher who calls a good game behind the plate and seemingly has the full trust of his pitching staff. It's not just the fact that he hits 285 and has an 850 OPS and a 135 WRC plus, but just everything around Baldwin screams, I'm a good player. And his approach at the plate for a player who has 250 plate appearances at the major league level under his belt, his approach is so good. And his at-bats, he never gives away at-bats. They're so complete. He works deep into the count, and he's a complete hitter. He has some power, like legitimate hit the ball 10, 15 rows deep power. Really good on base. He doesn't strike out a lot. He doesn't have a lot of swing and miss. Last time I looked, his strikeout rate is only 15 or 16%, which is elite, especially when you think about not only the stuff that he's seeing on a nightly basis, but also just the fact that Baldwin has really high exit velocities and hard hit rates. He is just such an impressive young player, only 24 years old. I mean, he's the complete package. And I mean, I was excited about Baldwin, hearing what people around the organization were saying in the spring and even last year when he was just going crazy down in Gwinnett and in the minors. But Baldwin is so much better than I thought he was going to be as a rookie. And man alive, I mean, the Braves seemingly have found yet another catcher that's going to be a core piece for a long time.
So I can certainly get where people, they see Drake Baldwin having the success that he's having. And, especially with kind of how several of current Braves who were thought to well be on their way to being near the best in the league at their current positions, the way that they've kind of fallen off over the past 18 months, I can see people being a bit skeptical. Is this a flash in the pan when it comes to Drake Baldwin? But there are plenty of indicators where that's not the case. I don't think that Chris Sale personally spotlighting Drake Baldwin at the beginning of the season in spring training, I don't think Chris Sale takes the time to do that unless he sees something special. And I trust Chris Sale's opinion of seeing something special more than most. But Scott, there's also the underlying metrics that show that he's doing what you would expect for him to do. And he does it, like you said, in all situations. He's got an 896 OPS against left-handed pitching. He's got a 916 OPS with runners in scoring position. That's something you don't see catchers his age do usually. You certainly don't see Braves doing it. But that's the big thing also that I'm really encouraged by when it comes to his inclusion on the Braves. He helps out in areas where we need it. Steven, yourself, so many of us talked about extending the lineup this winter. We thought Drake Baldwin could eventually be that. He certainly has proven to be that much quicker than anticipated.
And I'm really happy and excited that the Braves have made this shift with their lineup to get Baldwin in the lineup basically every single game. And sure, he might sit every now and then because he needs a breather. It's hot in the middle of the summertime, catching and DHing. But the Braves have clearly made a shift with their lineup to get Drake Baldwin in there every single night or close to it. We've talked about the importance of him winning the Rookie of the Year award because of the draft pick. Obviously, we know we want Baldwin to win Rookie of the Year because he's deserving, and that would be a very cool achievement for him. But you talk about adding another first-round pick and the money that comes with it. Frankly, the Braves need that. If this is a lost season, let's make the most of this high draft pick next summer, get another pick, get more money to work with, and let's restock this farm system because Lord knows if this team is going to continue to win divisions and compete for division titles, they're going to need reinforcements. Down in the minors, free agency is only getting more and more expensive every year. They don't really have trade assets right now that they can comfortably give away to improve the big league team because the few prospects that are worth a damn in the system, they're probably going to want to help in 2026 and 2027. I'm glad that Baldwin's having such a good year, such an important player for this team, and hopefully, health permitting, he can win Rookie of the Year and give the Braves kind of an added bonus off the field.
Another indication, and put on this what you may, because I know it's a short sample size. I won't go into all the details, but put a few perspectives out there on Twitter of just how special Baldwin is being at his age and as a rookie. And since 2000, the only players that have done or exceeded what Baldwin is doing in his rookie year or in a season where they were as young as Drake Baldwin are Brian McCann, Alejandro Kirk, Mike Napoli, Will Smith, and a guy by the name of Joe Mauer. Those are the only names that have exceeded what Drake Baldwin is doing right now as a catcher. And that's really impressive work. I'm not even saying Drake Baldwin's going to be to the level of any of those guys. It just means that I think there's a good chance he's a good catcher. And I'll end with this note on Baldwin. If you go through the last 30 to 35 years of Braves success, Over the past 35 years, the Braves have the second most productive catching situation in baseball. Only the Dodgers have been better. And I would guarantee you that if you look at our 30 best seasons, at least 25 of those had a strong catching presence. We saw it with Javi. We saw it with Brian McCann. We've seen it with combos as well. But Drake Baldwin being a bedrock of this organization, this team is at its best with a good catcher, and Drake Baldwin could be right up there with the names that I mentioned.
Yeah. Life, death, taxes, Braves having good catching. And that is something that we should not take for granted, because there are organizations that have not had good catching situation in forever. We're really spoiled. Just you listed off some of the terrific players. And even when the Braves don't have a fringe Hall of Famer like Brian McCann, they got great production out of Travis d'Arnaud and Kurt Suzuki for a couple of years. It was really like a valuable kind of rotational catcher. Like they have done such a good job of signing, drafting, developing, and utilizing these catchers for years. Of course, I mean, they were in such a luxurious position. They traded away William Contreras, who's been one of the better catchers in the National League for years. And frankly, I think the Brewers deserve a lot of credit for that too, because Milwaukee is one of those teams that develop catchers well. But yeah, man, I mean, the Braves, they somehow, no matter who it is, the names, the faces might change, but they always find a way to have good catching. And that is such an important thing for Major League Baseball teams. Front office execs will talk about the importance. Players talk about it. People who are around the game talk about it. It is really one of those positions where if you don't have a good catcher, it can really bite you in the butt.
Shout out Johnny Estrada. Just random names like that. The Braves turn them into all-stars. That's how good they are at it. But Drake Baldwin is not the only reason why you should continue to tune in, not only to the Braves, but the minor leagues as well. We'll discuss that in just a moment.
Nothing beats relaxing on a hot summer day and watching baseball. And the simplest way to get in on the action is to download the Pick 6 app from DraftKings. It's crazy simple. Just pick more or less on the stats for two or more of your favorite players, and boom, you're in the mix for big cash prizes. Nail your picks and you're heating up. Pick 6 brings upside with payouts up to 500 times. Pick 6 from DraftKings is the most fun way to play fantasy sports. Download the DraftKings Pick 6 app now and use code FOUL. That's code FOUL for new customers to get a special sign-up offer. Better payouts, bigger wins. Only with Pick 6 from DraftKings. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org in Connecticut. Must be 18 plus. Age and eligibility restrictions vary by jurisdiction. Pick 6 not available everywhere, including New York and Ontario. Void where prohibited. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see pick6.draftkings.com/promos.
So, Scott, the other news of the day is that it was anticipated that Austin Riley could potentially be coming back from his injury. Of course, for those who remember, it was right before the All-Star break. Austin Riley was in the midst of playing a game in St. Louis. It was the first game, the game I was at on that Friday. And Riley went out of the game with an abdominal injury. And, Luke Williams all of a sudden showed up at the plate, and everybody's like, what's going on? We got an abdominal injury. He's not going to be back today. Still feeling a little bit of discomfort, probably back later this week. I don't think there's much to take away so much of this, especially with him coming back Friday. But I do think that it's important to note, it's noteworthy that when it comes to the Braves, who still have plenty of players who they're dealing with injury, especially on the pitching side, the rush to get them back, the desire to get them on the field, it's not necessarily going to be at the same level as if we were trying to get to the playoffs and contend. I think that's going to be a bit of a change-up from previous seasons.
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, be careful with Austin Riley. You don't need to rush him back. Give him an extra day, give him an extra couple days. Seems like Friday is the day the Braves are targeting for Riley to be activated, which makes sense. They have a day game, an early day game on Wednesday, and then they're off Thursday. So by not activating Riley today, they probably weren't going to have him go both a night game and then a day game. Give him an extra 72 hours to be good. But yeah, I mean, there's no rush. And Mark Bowman was talking today about the pitching situation. Now, Chris Sale, assuming he doesn't have any setbacks with the ribs, can return in the middle of August. Maybe Sale wants to go and make a couple of starts down the stretch just to kind of shake off the cobwebs and make sure he doesn't go too long without throwing competitive pitches. But Sean, does it make sense to bring Spencer Schwallenbach all the way back in the middle of September? Are you going to have him make 5 rehab starts and just go from 0 to 100 to then make 2 starts the last 2 weeks of the season for a Braves team that's going to be out of it. Ronaldo Lopez might be able to come back at some point, but similarly, I don't really see a point. Joe Jimenez might be able to come back. But again, like there's a theme here of if the Braves are out of the race, and frankly, they're playing for a draft pick at this point. Like that's not a small thing. God forbid you rush one of these guys back, or not even rush them back, but just bring them back. And then they suffer a serious injury that hurts them and delays their 2026. I mean, that would be completely pointless and just not worth the risk, in my opinion.
Yeah, any decisions that you make right now, not only, again, I mean, me and Steven talked about this last week. Not only should everything that you do now be focused on 26 and beyond, it's also should be how do we make things better for 26 and beyond? And it's not doing things that don't make common sense. For instance, I think their draft made perfect sense. They did the right thing to address clear areas of need in their minor league system. Just use some common sense. I think the Braves do that just fine, but in the public, it's been a little bit more questionable here as of late. So, but we won't get into all that. Do want to get your quick thoughts though on the player who has come up and replaced Austin Riley, and that's Nacho Alvarez. Now, Nacho Alvarez, I feel like that he's for a few years now been touted as one of the better hitting prospects, one of our top 3 hitting prospects in the organization. But I think what we're seeing, Scott, I don't mean anything negative towards Nacho Alvarez. I just think that it was more of, hey, he had good on-base skills, and that stood out in a minor league system that just didn't have a lot of other players that were worth noting. I don't think Nacho Alvarez really has a lot of potential long-term in the majors because I just don't know how productive he is going to be against major league fastballs. He just does not seem productive with them. And if that doesn't change, I don't really see how he's going to be productive enough elsewhere to really stand out as being a future significant contributor for the Braves.
Yeah. If I had to just blindly predict, not even blindly, but just predict what Nacho Alvarez is, I think he's probably a utility player at the major league level, a bench guy. And of course, with the DH, the need for those utility types has gone away a little bit because you're not pinch hitting as much. You're not making as many defensive substitutions and moving pieces around. Yeah, Nacho, he doesn't do anything exceedingly well. And that can be a challenge. Like he's a pretty good athlete, but he's not a great one. He has some decent hand-eye and batted ball skills, but not great. He doesn't have a lot of power. His bat speed is not great. You mentioned the fastball's up in the zone. It's somewhere that pitchers attack Nacho. I will say he has really not played very much in 2025 because of the injuries. He was called up to replace Riley with basically no time to ramp up from, I believe, an oblique injury. So he's young enough that it's not totally gone. He does need to work on some things this offseason, but I tend to agree. I mean, I'm not sure that Nacho is anything more than a bench piece or someone you can rotate around the field, but, play him at third, play him at second, get him some reps in the outfield at some point in case he can stick as a 4th or 5th outfielder. I think that's probably Nacho's future. And frankly, it probably also makes sense to play him down the stretch if the Braves are fully out of it and just get him some more reps at the major league level and see if he can do anything or show signs of improvement.
Absolutely. And you would love for him to work out. I hope he does work out. I hope that there's a level or an aspect to his performance that we've not seen as of yet. It's just so hard to find success if you can't hit those fastballs, but maybe more exposure at the major league level will unlock that as having some potential for his future. So I mentioned the minor leagues before we went to the break. Why the minor leagues? Well, one name that I think Braves fans are familiar with is former first-round pick Owen Murphy. He made his 2025 debut. As a matter of fact, his first debut in 14 months coming off Tommy John surgery in the Florida Coast League today. Looked pretty good. So you've got Owen Murphy back. J.R. Ritchie is pitching to an all-star level. He represented the Braves in the Futures game. Cam Caminiti is starting to show signs of why many consider him the Braves' top prospect. Hayden Harris, Giancarlo Slora, Didier Fuentes. I'm going on and on. This Braves team, one really, really positive factor that can come out of this season is not only their young pitching being healthy, but potentially their young pitching ending on good notes and showing why many hold them in high regard. If that can happen, you got 2 things working in your favor going into the offseason. More potential assets to use in trades to go to fill clear needs to help you get back to contender status, but also for a pitching staff that just unfortunately cannot stay healthy, more trusted reinforcements. If there's one big thing besides Drake Baldwin to hope for the future, it's that our pitching really shows out in the second half of the year to give us that as an asset or something to dive into to help address other needs in the offseason and beyond.
Yeah, there are definitely some names in the farm system who I think are gaining some real traction as potential pieces down the road for the Braves. And you mentioned Owen Murphy was throwing the ball exceptionally well last year before having Tommy John. He's a kid who has a lot of potential, high pedigree. We've seen flashes, I guess, from like Didier Fuentes, who might factor in. I mean, frankly, the Braves are going to need people to make starts over the final 2 months. So maybe we see Fuentes. I think J.R. Ritchie, if he continues to pitch well after a recent promotion, I think we could see J.R. Ritchie make his Braves debut in the second half of the year. So yes, there's some real talent here. Of course, young pitchers, they'll break your heart. You think they're going to be great, and they just don't work out. And then sometimes out of the frickin' blue, you get a Spencer Schwellenbach who just sets the world on fire as a known prospect, but not someone who was a top prospect on those lists. So yeah, there's some talent in the system. I agree with what you said earlier. I really liked the process of the Braves draft this year. I'll let you know in 8 years if it was a good draft or not. But until then, I like the way they kind of did some underslot deals at the top to add more high school talent, steal them away from the college ranks. And you see what happens because the draft is just such a crapshoot. And you hope that you strike gold on one or two of these kids, you're coming out ahead.
Yeah, and for a farm system that regularly is near the bottom of rankings, 2018 we had Rookie of the Year. 2022 we had the first and second winners in Rookie of the Year. 2024 we had a top 5, I believe, winner in Rookie of the Year. He was at least in the conversation, second best rookie pitcher.
And Schwellenbach, yeah, I mean, if it was not a historic, you had Skeens, you had Jackson Merrill, you had Churio in Milwaukee. I mean, it was a loaded rookie class last year. Some years Schwellenbach would have won.
Yeah. And then, of course, you got Drake Baldwin this year. You make the point, Scott. You brought it up. For a farm system that that always appears to be at the bottom of the list.
They always turn out, man.
Yes.
I mean, it's weird because I think objectively both things can be true. You look at the Braves farm system, you look at how the Braves farm system is ranked across the board. It's not just one. Baseball America, Baseball Prospectus, Fangraphs, ESPN. Nobody thinks the Braves farm system is anything special or that it's been anything special the last couple of years. And I think that's a fair assessment. But they also are just so good at player development. And they turn out Schwellenbach and Baldwin. And a couple years before that, Michael Harris was like a fringe top 75 prospect, wins Rookie of the Year. Spencer Strider was a 4th-round injured college draft pick. And 2 years later, he's lighting up big league radar guns at 99. I mean, the Braves do deserve a lot of credit. Even if the system is not necessarily viewed in the eyes of Baseball America, for example, as one of the better ones, there is something to be said for turning out really good major leaguers like Drake Baldwin this year. Even if they didn't, I mean, if Baldwin was a top 10 prospect coming into the season, which is probably what he should have been rated, maybe top 20, does it have a different feeling when he sets the world on fire? Probably. I mean, it would have helped in the rankings for whatever those are worth.
Bryce Elder was an all-star his rookie year. Was it his rookie year? I think that was his rookie year. Maybe I'm wrong. May have been a second year. But hey, he was a contributor as well.
Yeah,
it may have been his second year. Okay, that wasn't the best thing to end our conversation on tonight. But the point is that when it comes to the Braves, things may look bleak, major league level, may not seem like there's many reinforcements. They figure out a way. They need to figure out things at the major league level when it comes to offense again. But I do feel like even with the draft being as good of a process as it was, I do feel like that if people are down on the farm system right now, a good second half of the season could really be a big boost to where we can once again see some reinforcements that could help out next year and beyond, even to the point of helping us be a contender. Scott, anything else from you as we wrap up this edition of the Hammer Territory podcast?
Just have to give a big old shout out to Luke Williams, who pitched the 9th inning tonight in a 9-0 shutout loss. Good on Luke. 1, 2, 3. Didn't give up anything to the Giants. Good on him. I'm sure he got a bunch of high fives and pats on the back in the dugout. But yeah, I mean, just hopefully on Wednesday, folks will probably be listening to this maybe as the game is going on because it's a day game on Wednesday. But hopefully the Braves can win the series. I know this is kind of a lost season, but at least for me, deep down, I always want the Braves to win. Yeah, we'll be back. More shows we do have. I'm going to tease it because it's already been recorded. We have an in-depth episode recapping the draft that Brad and Gaurav Videk, friend of the show, recorded. So that'll be in your feed soon. So you get a full-on breakdown from people who know far more about the draft than Sean and I and Brad, which is exciting. I'm looking forward to hearing it. I have not heard it yet. And as always, win or lose, good or bad, we'll do shows throughout the week. And hey, maybe Sean, me and you, buddy, sometime we might be doing one of those emergency reaction shows whenever the Braves inevitably make a trade.
And you never know who could potentially show up on the podcast as well. In a year that seems lost, who knows? We may have some special guests that could also come on and give their perspective on the Braves. Some fun ones, some in-depth ones. Hey, that's the good thing. If you're not talking about winning baseball, that opens up the door to get a bunch of different perspectives when it comes to the Braves and baseball in general. You can find Scott Coleman at Scott Coleman55 on X/Twitter, myself at StatsSAC on X/Twitter, Hammer Territory across all forms of social media, part of the Foul Territory family of podcasts. And I cannot go without mentioning that for those of you who are going to be listening or watching the show before tomorrow's matchup, it's a pretty good one. Spencer Strider versus future Hall of Famer Justin Verlander. I know Verlander has not been himself this year, but that doesn't mean you still don't really get excited to see him on the mound. That's going to be a good one to see. But until next time, go Braves. We'll talk to you again soon here on the Hammer Territory Podcast.